The wind howled across the open plains, carrying with it the scent of rain and something far more dangerous. In the deepening twilight of the South African savanna, the sky crackled with distant thunder, ominous and heavy. But it wasn't the storm that made Jabari's heart pound. It was the silence. Barumo, the elderly elephant he had grown to love like family, was missing. And in the distance, came the unmistakable roar of lions. Jabari slammed his foot on the gas, his hands trembling on the wheel. Every second mattered. His mind raced with questions. Was Barumo hurt? Was he alone? Was he already too late? The vast wilderness offered no answers. Only fear. Would you have the courage to race into the wild, knowing a predator might be waiting? In the heart of Windmere Wildlife Park, tucked away near the golden savannas of northern Kenya, lived an old elephant named Barumo. For more than 30 years, Barumo had been a quiet presence within the park's walls, gentle, slow, wise. Children grew up visiting him, whispering his name, throwing fruit toward his enclosure. He had become more than just an attraction, he was part of the park's soul. But time doesn't spare anyone, not even giants. Barumo's once powerful legs began to tremble after long walks. His ears drooped lower with each season. The veterinarians at Windmere grew increasingly concerned. His breathing was heavier, his appetite less consistent. Despite the park's best efforts to modify his enclosure and provide constant medical care, they knew deep down, Barumo was no longer thriving in captivity. Dr. Lena Mwangi, the park's head wildlife vet, fought back tears as she addressed the staff one early morning. Barumo needs to leave. Not because we failed him, but because we love him too much to watch him fade in a cage. A long search began. Months passed as the team contacted elephant sanctuaries across Kenya. Finally, a response arrived from Maji Saba Reserve, a semi-wild protected area nestled near the Laikipia Plateau. They had space. They had caretakers. Most importantly, they had freedom. The decision was unanimous, but it still hurt. The day of departure came faster than anyone wanted. A small team gathered at dawn. Barumo, sensing something unfamiliar, stood near the edge of his enclosure, his massive eyes scanning the faces around him. There was a solemn silence. As the gate opened, Barumo hesitated. He had never known a life outside the high fences of Windmere. As he stepped onto the transport truck, every creak of the platform echoed like a goodbye. Keepers whispered soft farewells. A child, holding her father's hand, waved through teary eyes. Dr. Lena placed her hand on the elephant's rough side. You deserve a sky with no bars. Barumo didn't roar. He didn't trumpet. But in the stillness of that moment, as the engine rumbled to life, his trunk slowly reached toward the air, almost as if sensing the wind's promise of something new. The journey had begun. The truck rumbled along the winding dirt roads, kicking up clouds of red dust as it made its way toward Maji Saba Reserve. Inside the specially outfitted transport compartment, Barumo swayed gently with the motion, his massive body low to the ground, eyes half closed. He wasn't sleeping, he hadn't slept since the journey began, but he wasn't panicking either. There was a quiet ache in his gaze, as though he understood that something was ending, even if he didn't know what waited ahead. Beside the driver sat Jabari, the caretaker from Maji Saba who had volunteered to accompany Barumo back to his new home. A quiet man in his 40s with a weathered face and steady hands, Jabari had spent years rehabilitating rescued elephants, but this would be his first time caring for one so old, so close to the twilight of life. Every few kilometers, Jabari would lean back, speaking softly through the grated panel between the cabin and the compartment. You're doing well, old friend. Just a little longer now. Barumo didn't respond, but somehow, Jabari knew he was listening. As they drove across the golden grasslands and through acacia-dotted valleys, the landscape began to change. Rolling hills stretched in every direction. Wildebeest and giraffes dotted the distance. A flock of crowned cranes soared overhead, their wings casting fleeting shadows on the road. It was nearing dusk when the vehicle finally slowed, passing through a modest wooden gate flanked by 2 Maji Saba rangers. The sun hung low, casting long orange rays across the savannah. Jabari stepped out first, inhaling deeply. This was home. Behind him, the truck doors swung open with a creak. Barumo remained still at first, blinking in the fading light. Then, with a low rumble from deep in his chest, he slowly rose to his feet. A small group of rangers stood silently nearby, respectfully watching. Jabari motioned gently with his hand, his voice calm. "Come. No walls here. Only sky." Barumo took a tentative step forward. His massive foot landed on soft earth, not concrete, not tile, but warm dirt, wild and free. Another step. Then another. Soon he was standing fully outside the transport compartment. The sky above him stretched wide and limitless, the wind carrying the scent of wild grass and distant waterholes. His ears lifted slightly. His trunk curled forward. He looked around, not confused, not afraid, but thoughtful. As if realizing, maybe for the first time, what it meant to belong to the land. Jabari watched silently, his chest tight with emotion. "Welcome home, Barumo." The elephant turned his head slowly, his eyes meeting Jabari's with a look that stopped him cold. Gratitude. Recognition. Something ancient and wise. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Barumo let out a low, soft rumble that rolled across the plains. It was the sound of arrival. Of acceptance. That first night at Maji Saba Reserve, the air was crisp with the scent of dry grass and wildflowers. Jabari chose to stay nearby, pitching a modest canvas tent not far from Barumo's resting area. He knew the old elephant wouldn't wander far, not yet. Transitions like this, especially for a creature so deeply rooted in routine, required more than time. They required presence. Reassurance. Barumo stood under a large marula tree, his ears twitching occasionally, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the night, the distant howl of a jackal, the rustling of zebras moving through tall grass, the haunting calls of owls overhead. Unlike the echo of concrete enclosures and the hum of city life at the zoo, the night here was alive, raw and untamed. Jabari sat by a small campfire, watching Barumo through the flickering light. In his hand, he held an old leather notebook, a journal kept by one of the zoo's senior caretakers. It was filled with years of notes about Barumo, his habits, his food preferences, the times he'd become agitated during storms, the days when he stood for hours gazing into the distance as if remembering something long forgotten. Reading those pages now, under a canopy of stars, Jabari felt the weight of legacy. Barumo wasn't just a zoo elephant. He was a survivor. A witness to decades of human hands trying to contain what was never meant to be caged. Suddenly, a soft trumpet sounded from the marula tree. Jabari looked up, Barumo had turned toward him. The old elephant walked slowly across the clearing, each step deliberate, his large feet silent on the earth. When he reached the edge of the firelight, he paused. Jabari didn't move, didn't speak. He simply looked into Barumo's eyes and waited. Barumo extended his trunk, not aggressively, but with curiosity, and touched the edge of Jabari's shoulder, as if memorizing the scent of the man who had brought him here. "I'm not your past," Jabari whispered, "but maybe I can help you find peace in what's left." The moment hung between them like the thin smoke rising from the fire. Then, without a sound, Barumo turned and walked back into the dark, settling down near the tree with a low sigh. In the days that followed, something remarkable began to happen. Barumo, who had been stiff, slow, and cautious, started to move more freely. He wandered further from his sleeping spot, browsed on fresh acacia branches, and bathed in a shallow mud pool with visible delight. The rangers noted the changes in their daily reports. Barumo drank 25 liters of water today. He dusted himself near the western bluff. He vocalized at sunrise. Jabari continued to monitor him closely but now from a distance. The bond had been built. The trust was there. And the wild was calling. One late afternoon, just as the sun dipped low over the savannah and painted the sky in fiery streaks of orange and crimson, Jabari noticed something strange. Barumo hadn't returned to the observation zone near the marula trees as he usually did each evening. For the past week, the old elephant had grown more adventurous, wandering deeper into the reserve, but he had always come back by dusk, slow, steady, and predictable. Jabari's gut tightened. He scanned the horizon with his binoculars, then radioed the field station. Barumo hasn't returned. I'm going to search east of the watering hole. Keep the line open. Copy that. We'll ping your location every 10, came the reply. He grabbed his pack and headed into the brush in his open-top jeep. The tracks were faint, elephant footprints partially covered by wind-blown dust. But Jabari knew how to read the land, and more importantly, how to read Barumo. He followed a trail of broken shrubs, a disturbed patch of sand, and the occasional heavy indent in the earth. Then he heard it. A deep, throaty rumble in the distance, part roar, part trumpet. The unmistakable cry of an elephant, filled with fear. Jabari slammed his foot on the gas. Minutes later, he crested a small ridge and saw the scene unfold below, Barumo, cornered by a pride of lions, young, hungry, and bold. The old bull was trembling, flanked on all sides. His trunk was raised, swaying weakly, ears fanned out in a futile warning. Blood ran from a gash on his leg where he had likely stumbled on a sharp rock trying to flee. Jabari's heart pounded. He knew lions rarely attacked adult elephants unless they were weak, and Barumo, despite his spirit, was undeniably vulnerable. There was no time to wait for backup. Jabari grabbed his flare gun and a metal rod from the jeep and charged down the hill yelling, "Hey! Get back! Yaha!" He fired the flare into the sky. The sudden burst of light and sound startled the lions. 2 of them backed off immediately. The others hesitated. Jabari didn't stop. He swung the metal rod above his head, making as much noise as possible, advancing like a wild force of nature himself. One lion lunged briefly, teeth bared. Jabari swung, missing by inches, but it was enough. The predator backed off. One by one, the lions gave up their ambush and slinked into the tall grass. Jabari dropped to his knees beside Barumo, panting, heart hammering in his chest. "Hey, old man," he murmured, reaching for the first aid kit. "You gave me a scare." Barumo let out a low, exhausted rumble. His eyes were dull, but still alive. As Jabari gently dressed the wound, his hands shaking from the adrenaline, he whispered, "You're not going anywhere yet. Not today." Just then, headlights appeared on the distant trail. Backup had arrived. A wave of relief washed over Jabari, but he kept his hand resting on Barumo's thick, warm skin, grounding both of them in the aftermath of survival. Barumo's legs were shaking, and his breath came in labored bursts. Though the lions had been driven off, the stress and physical strain had taken a deep toll. Jabari didn't need a vet's opinion to see it. Barumo was on the edge of collapse. The rescue team arrived moments later, headlights bouncing across the uneven terrain. 2 veterinarians leapt from the second truck, carrying emergency equipment. "He's stable, but weak," Jabari reported, not taking his hand off the elephant's broad forehead. One gash, likely from a fall. But no visible bites. Dr. Queasy, a tall, calm presence with years of experience in elephant trauma, knelt beside Barumo and began checking vitals. "We need to hydrate him immediately and lower his stress. Let's prepare the drip." Barumo flinched slightly as the needle was inserted, but he didn't resist. It was as though he understood they were here to help. One of the assistants wrapped warm blankets over his flank as night began to settle over the savannah. He followed his instinct, Jabari said quietly, watching the old elephant. "But he's not made for the wild anymore, not alone." "No," Dr. Queasy agreed, "but he still has fight in him." After stabilizing him, they decided it was too risky to load Barumo into the truck that night. Instead, they erected a temporary field station around him, canopies, heat lamps, and rotating staff to watch through the night. Jabari refused to leave. He sat near the elephant, sipping water, occasionally talking to him in a low voice. The stars blinked above, brilliant and cold. At one point, Barumo stirred. Slowly, with effort, he lifted his trunk and nudged Jabari's arm. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. "You're welcome," Jabari whispered, feeling his throat tighten. The next morning, with the sun casting golden rays across the plains, they carefully helped Barumo to his feet. He wobbled but stood, leaning slightly toward Jabari as if drawing strength from his presence. The ride back to the sanctuary was slow and careful. A specialized trailer followed behind the escort vehicles, cushioned with thick bedding and reinforced to ease the strain on Barumo's joints. Back at the Addo Wildlife Sanctuary, the staff was waiting, some with tears in their eyes. Barumo had become more than just a rescued elephant. He was a symbol of endurance, of old age refusing to surrender, and of the deep connection possible between human and wild. Jabari stayed by Barumo's side for days as the elephant slowly recovered. He ate with renewed appetite, moved more steadily each day, and once again watched the distant horizon with calm amber eyes. But something had shifted. Barumo, though recovering physically, seemed more introspective, more still. As if he knew that his time was drawing close. And Jabari, he was preparing, too. Over the following weeks, Barumo regained some of his strength. Each morning, he greeted Jabari with a gentle trunk nudge and soft rumble. His steps were still slow, but more stable. The caretakers at the Addo Wildlife Sanctuary cheered with quiet hope as the old elephant resumed a routine, wandering short distances in the golden morning light, resting under his favorite acacia tree in the afternoons. But Jabari noticed something else. Barumo, despite healing, seemed to be preparing for something deeper. He stopped exploring beyond the central field. He watched the sun longer as it dipped behind the hills. And more than once, Jabari caught him facing the distance, as if remembering something he could no longer reach. "He knows," whispered Nandi, a young volunteer who had taken to drawing the old elephant. "He knows his story is ending." Jabari didn't reply. He simply sat with Barumo, sometimes reading aloud, sometimes humming tunes his mother used to sing when he was a child in the Lowveld. The elephant never moved during those moments. It was as if he was listening, not just with ears, but with his soul. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in streaks of fire and lavender, Jabari brought Barumo his dinner. But the elephant didn't eat. He remained under the acacia tree, eyes half closed, trunk curled gently beneath him. Jabari knelt down, resting his hand against the elephant's rough, ancient skin. "It's okay, old friend," he whispered, tears burning his eyes. "You're safe now. You don't have to keep fighting." Barumo let out one soft, low rumble. It was almost a sigh. And then, silence. When dawn came, Barumo didn't wake. The sanctuary stood still that morning. Volunteers and staff formed a quiet circle around the great creature who had, in his last chapter, taught them all what grace, strength, and quiet resilience truly meant. Jabari remained by his side the longest, hand resting on the elephant's brow, eyes locked on the rising sun. Later that week, the sanctuary planted a marula tree on the hill above the field. At its base, a plaque read, "Barumo, the elephant who taught us to listen." His story spread across South Africa, and beyond. A campaign for elder animal sanctuaries was launched in his name. Children sent letters. Artists painted murals. Barumo had become a symbol, not of sadness, but of peaceful passage, of what it means to live and be loved until the very end. And Jabari? He still works at Addo, now heading the sanctuary's elder care initiative. But every sunset, without fail, he walks to the marula tree, sits down in silence, and watches the horizon, where earth meets sky, and where wild spirits roam free. Barumo now rests peacefully beneath the golden skies of his new home, where the wind sings through the trees and the stars watch over him like old friends. Though his steps have grown slower, and his time may be short, he walks with dignity, surrounded by compassion, not concrete. And Jabari? He never forgot the moment Barumo reached out with his trunk, not in fear, but in trust. It was a silent thank you from a soul who had known captivity, and who was now tasting freedom, even if only for a little while. This isn't just a story about one elephant and one man. It's a reminder, for all of us, that love, courage, and respect for life can bridge the divide between species. That even in the face of danger, we are capable of great kindness. Let's cherish and protect those who cannot speak for themselves. Because sometimes, all it takes to change a life is a single act of bravery, and a heart willing to care. If this story touched you, don't forget to like the video, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories from the wild.